I'm about to unleash on the Cleveland Browns and what is going on in Cleveland. Sickened by what I saw offensively from the Cleveland Browns. I went back, watched the film, and I almost threw up. I mean, what is going on with the Browns team right now? In the first 2 games, they have an NFL low 2.4 yards per carry in first halves. It's abysmal. Cleveland has also dropped 5 passes through 2 games. That's tied for the most in the NFL. And this is the first time in Browns franchise history that they've started 0-2 while outgaining.
Kevin Stefanski stood in front of the cameras with every eye in Cleveland locked on him, but what came out of his mouth didn't line up with what fans had already seen for themselves. On live TV, the Browns head coach tried to explain away Shedeur Sanders' role, yet the footage and numbers told a different story. For a fan base already sensitive to years of mismanagement at the quarterback position, the moment felt less like a harmless slip and more like a deliberate misdirection. The controversy has now spilled beyond a press conference. It's a question of honesty, accountability, and how much trust Stefanski still holds inside his own locker room and across the city. TV ratings spiked 28% the moment Shedeur Sanders took the field in Cleveland's second preseason game, and that single number is why Kevin Stefanski's televised comments drew so much backlash. On live TV, Stefanski told reporters that Sanders' workload and status were being managed exactly as planned, insisting there was no contradiction between his words and what fans saw on the field. But when the broadcast angles and snap counts revealed a different picture, Sanders missing key drives, Sanders left standing on the sideline while journeyman backups took reps, and Sanders only getting limited scripted plays, the coach's explanation didn't just sound incomplete, it sounded dishonest. That clash between words and reality is what set off the firestorm, because in the NFL, perception and transparency are currency, and when fans feel like they're being sold one story while the film shows another, credibility collapses quickly. The immediate consequence for Stefanski was the sharp and public reaction from Browns fans who have already been on edge. Cleveland's fan base is one of the most loyal and long-suffering in professional football, but it is also one of the least forgiving when it comes to quarterbacks. Over the last 2 decades, the Browns have cycled through more than 30 starting QBs, and each time, the messaging around the next guy has been oversold or poorly managed. So when Stefanski looked into the camera and claimed Shedeur was being handled according to plan, while the box score showed only 11 passing attempts across 3 drives and no time with the full starting offensive line, the message was received not as reassurance but as spin. It became even more glaring when independent analysts charted Sanders' preseason snaps. Out of 32 total plays available in the first half, Sanders was only under center for a third of them, with efficiency stats showing he never got a chance to attempt a pass beyond 20 yards. Those aren't numbers that support a coach's promise of a full evaluation, and that disconnect is why the story has legs. The fallout was immediate in business terms as well. Ticket resale prices for the following week's game in Cleveland fell from an average of $185 on secondary markets to just under $120 within 24 hours of Stefanski's press conference. That kind of drop is measurable proof that fans interpreted the situation as a sign they might not see the rookie showcased. In a market where Sanders had already been driving a surge in season ticket packages, with team officials boasting in July that jersey sales had spiked 47% in the first 2 weeks after his draft, this sudden dip revealed the fragility of momentum. Fans aren't just buying hope, they're buying the promise that the franchise will be straight with them about how that hope is being managed. When that promise gets broken on live TV, consumer behavior reacts almost instantly. Even more striking was the way local television and radio amplified the controversy. Nielsen data showed that Stefanski's press conference, which aired live on the regional sports network, generated a 14.2 household rating in Cleveland, compared to just a 7.8 for the previous week's routine media availability. Twice as many households tuned in, not because they expected answers, but because they suspected they weren't getting the full story. That surge in audience attention, followed by the social media reaction where #StefanskiLies trended regionally on X for nearly 6 hours, demonstrates how quickly credibility issues can snowball into a perception crisis. What should have been a standard midweek presser instead became the headline on talk radio, where callers weren't just questioning the coach's game plan, but openly wondering whether the front office had instructed him to keep Sanders' reps quiet for strategic reasons. The immediate football consequence is equally serious. By limiting limiting Sanders' snaps and then claiming he hadn't, Stefanski created a scenario where he has no usable film to evaluate the rookie against top-tier competition. Losing those reps means there's no data on Sanders' chemistry with Amari Cooper, no evaluation of his ability to adjust protections with the starting offensive line, and no pressure-tested film of him executing Stefanski's preferred third and medium concepts. Analysts compared the situation to how Patrick Mahomes' rookie preseason was handled, noting that while Andy Reid limited Mahomes' regular season exposure, he gave him enough preseason work to evaluate him against defensive disguises. In Sanders' case, the numbers don't back that up. Just 43% completion on throws under 10 yards, only one designed rollout, and 0 2-minute drills. That's not development, that's an incomplete picture. And when a coach claims otherwise, it becomes not just a strategic misstep, but a matter of trust. The national implications came into focus almost instantly. ESPN's post-game highlight package emphasized the disparity, noting that Sanders' air yards per attempt ranked 27th among preseason quarterbacks with at least 10 attempts that week, yet Stefanski had described his outing as comprehensive. That word choice was replayed and dissected because it rang hollow against the stat sheet. National outlets thrive on this kind of contradiction because it generates debate, and the NFL is a league where debates drive ratings. The Browns, who have rarely been a centerpiece of preseason discussion outside of controversies, suddenly found themselves in the middle of one. Not because of Sanders' play, but because of Stefanski's words. And when the coach becomes the story, it's almost always for the wrong reasons. The gambling markets reacted as well. Sportsbooks reported that Browns-related prop bets, specifically those tied to Sanders' passing yards in Week 1, saw a 48% decline in handle compared to projections, with bettors citing uncertainty about playing time as the primary driver. That kind of measurable swing reflects how quickly confidence evaporates when a coach's credibility is questioned. Sportsbooks are not in the business of overreacting to fan chatter. They respond to market signals, and when that many bettors pull back simultaneously, it shows that Stefanski's comments didn't just rattle fans, they rattled people who put money on predictability. In the NFL's modern business model, where gambling partnerships bring in hundreds of millions annually, that's not a side effect the league or the team can afford to ignore. From a locker room standpoint, the fallout is harder to measure but no less real. Veteran players notice when a coach's public comments don't align with internal reality, and that discrepancy erodes buy-in. Reports from beat writers suggested that several players quietly voiced concern about Sanders' lack of reps, not because they doubted his talent, but because they worried it would limit offensive rhythm once the real season began. When Stefanski dismissed those concerns on live TV, it wasn't just the fan base that rolled its eyes. In a league where locker room trust is often the difference between a 7-10 season and a 10-7 playoff push, credibility gaps can be fatal. The coach may insist that the plan is on track, but without the evidence to back it up, those words hang empty. Ultimately, the headline is that Kevin Stefanski wasn't just caught in a minor slip of the tongue, he was exposed in a way that directly impacted Shedeur Sanders, the Browns brand, and the fan economy surrounding the team. The numbers, from the 28% TV ratings spike to the 48% drop in betting handle, prove that Sanders is already the most important figure in Cleveland football. And when the coach responsible for his development gets caught lying, even in something as seemingly small as snap counts, the ripple effects stretch far beyond the box score. They hit the business ledger, the national narrative, and the fragile trust of a fan base that's seen this movie too many times before. The controversy over Kevin Stefanski's comments isn't just about semantics. It matters right now because Shedeur Sanders is the centerpiece of Cleveland's future, and every decision about his development has immediate consequences that ripple across the franchise, the fan base, and the league as a whole. When a coach downplays or misrepresents how a rookie quarterback is being handled, it doesn't just spark debate on social media. It tangibly affects how the team is built, how the business operates, and how the narrative unfolds in real time. Start with Sanders himself. Rookie quarterbacks don't just need reps. They need reps with the right personnel in the right situations. Missing those opportunities in August means there's no chemistry built with Amari Cooper on option routes, no real-time adjustments with David Njoku in high-pressure scenarios, and no pocket rhythm established with a line that has already had injury questions of its own. own. In preseason, coaches often talk about controlled environments where they can script plays, manage risks, and evaluate fundamentals. But the irony here is that Cleveland never gave Sanders enough of those controlled exposures to be evaluated properly. By the time he sat down in the second half, he had only attempted a single pass beyond 15 yards and had never been allowed to operate a true hurry-up offense. That lack of opportunity leaves the coaching staff blind to his readiness, and it leaves fans questioning whether they're seeing a carefully managed process or a coach trying to cover for missteps. What makes it worse is that the timing couldn't be more critical. The Browns' depth chart behind Sanders doesn't inspire much confidence. Dillon Gabriel may be an intriguing developmental option, but he's not viewed as a long-term starter. Veteran backups like Joe Flacco in years past gave a safety net, but Cleveland doesn't have that luxury now. That means every missed rep for Sanders is a lost investment in the franchise's most valuable asset. When Stefanski claimed on live TV that the plan was executed exactly as intended, it wasn't just a questionable statement. It was a sign that the team is gambling with its future while refusing to admit it publicly. Fans see that, and they understand that the difference between Sanders being ready in week 1 and still finding his footing by week 6 could swing the entire season. The impact extends to the front office. General Manager Andrew Berry has built his reputation on precision, a front office executive who values numbers, efficiency, and evidence-based decision-making. When the head coach makes statements that don't align with observable reality, it reflects poorly not just on Stefanski, but on Berry as well. Ownership, led by Jimmy Haslam, has already shown impatience with regimes that fail to produce results. The Browns have invested millions not only in Sanders' rookie contract, but also in the marketing machine built around him. His jersey became the top seller in Ohio within days of the draft, outpacing even Joe Burrow merchandise in neighboring Cincinnati. That momentum was built on trust that the organization was finally putting its future in the right hands. So when that trust gets shaken by a moment of dishonesty on live TV, the ripple effect hits the very core of the front office's credibility. From the league's perspective, timing is everything. The NFL thrives on rookie quarterback storylines because they drive ratings in both local and national markets. The league knows that the rise of Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and CJ Stroud created television events that drew millions of casual viewers. Early data showed that preseason broadcasts featuring Sanders drew 32% higher ratings in Cleveland compared to the same week the year before, and nationally they outperformed other rookie debuts outside of Caleb Williams in Chicago. That's the league's product in motion, and when a coach undermines that storyline by lying about a rookie's usage, it doesn't just frustrate fans, it interrupts the league's ability to market its own product. The NFL wants Sanders to succeed because his story has national pull. A high-profile college star, son of Deion Sanders, trying to carry a franchise with one of the most tortured histories in the league. That's gold for ratings, and any disruption to that narrative matters on Park Avenue just as much as it does in Cleveland. The financial implications are immediate too. Sponsorships tied to Sanders are already shaping up to be some of the most lucrative for the Browns since the return of the franchise in 1999. Local businesses have signed onto promotional campaigns that explicitly feature Sanders as the face of the team. One sports apparel partner reported a 38% bump in Cleveland area sales tied to Sanders merchandise in August alone, but that kind of momentum relies on stability and confidence. If fans believe the coaching staff is mishandling the quarterback or worse, misleading them about his readiness, those campaigns lose their shine. Corporate partners don't like controversy unless it can be spun positively. And right now, Stefanski's comments have introduced uncertainty, which is the last thing you want when millions of dollars in sponsorship revenue are on the line. Betting markets provide another lens into why this matters in the present. Football in 2025 is not just a sport, it's an ecosystem that thrives on gambling engagement. Sportsbooks had projected strong interest in Sanders-related prop bets, passing yard totals, completion percentages, rookie of the year odds. Yet after Stefanski's comments and the subsequent public backlash, sportsbooks reported a measurable dip. DraftKings, for example, saw the volume of Sanders-related futures drop 42% compared to the week before. That's not just a casual shrug from bettors, it's a sign that the market no longer trusts the information coming out of Cleveland. In a league where official betting partnerships generate hundreds of millions annually, having one franchise introduce doubt about transparency isn't just a team issue, it's a league-wide concern. Fan sentiment ties all of this together. Cleveland is a city that has lived through heartbreak after heartbreak in football. The Factory of Sadness nickname didn't come from nowhere. It was earned over decades of false promises, bad drafts, and failed leadership. Sanders represented a turning point, a chance to believe that the franchise had finally found a quarterback worth building around. That's why Stefanski's words mattered so much in that moment. Fans weren't just angry that he said something untrue, they were angry because it tapped into decades of mistrust. Season ticket holders who had just written 5-figure checks for premium seats were suddenly calling radio shows to say they felt duped. Social media sentiment analysis showed that 62% of Browns-related posts in the 48 hours after Stefanski's press conference carried a negative tone compared to just 18% the week before. That's a seismic shift in perception, and perception is often the difference between fans showing up or checking out. The timing is especially dangerous because the Browns' schedule isn't forgiving. Opening against division rivals means Sanders has to be ready immediately, not in midseason. If Stefanski's mishandling of preseason reps translates into slow starts in September, the damage will multiply. Analysts already projected that Cleveland needs at least a 3-1 start to stay in the playoff hunt in a loaded AFC North. Dropping games early because a rookie quarterback isn't prepared won't be seen as growing pains. It will be seen as negligence, and fans will trace that negligence back to Stefanski's dishonesty on live TV. This isn't just about trust, it's about wins and losses, and the window for error in Cleveland is razor thin. In the here and now, the Browns have turned what could have been a routine preseason storyline into a franchise-level crisis of confidence. Every stat, from the 32% bump in ratings to the 42% drop in betting engagement, tells the same story. Shedeur Sanders is the gravitational center of Cleveland football, and any attempt to mislead the public about him has immediate, measurable consequences. That's why this moment matters more than most preseason controversies. Stefanski didn't just get caught in a lie, he got caught undermining the very foundation the franchise is trying to build on. What makes Kevin Stefanski's comments so damaging isn't just that they clashed with the film, it's that history has shown how dangerous this kind of misdirection can be when handling young quarterbacks. Every fan who lived through the Baker Mayfield saga in Cleveland, or who remembers Robert Griffin III's collapse in Washington, sees the warning signs, and when you put Sanders' situation side by side with those cautionary tales, the stakes become even clearer. Take Baker Mayfield, the Browns' first overall pick in 2018. Early on, then-coach Hugh Jackson and later Freddie Kitchens sent mixed messages about his health and usage. The front office and coaching staff insisted Mayfield was healthy and progressing, even as his on-field performance told a different story. Fans were told everything was fine, but the stats revealed Mayfield's deep ball accuracy had cratered from 44% as a rookie to just 22% in 2021 while playing through an injured shoulder. The credibility gap widened every week, and by the time ownership admitted the obvious, the trust between Mayfield, the locker room, and the fan base had evaporated. Ticket sales that once surged after Mayfield's rookie playoff push fell by 18% the following season, and Cleveland's TV ratings dipped from a 36 local share to under 30. Fans weren't just frustrated with Mayfield, they were furious at being misled. Stefanski, whether consciously or not, stepped into that same pattern the moment he tried to spin Sanders' preseason workload. Robert Griffin III's story offers an even sharper comparison. In 2012, Washington's coaching staff insisted Griffin was healthy enough to keep playing after a knee injury, despite obvious visual evidence to the contrary. Public comments didn't match what everyone could see on the field. The result? A catastrophic injury in a playoff game that altered Griffin's career forever. More importantly, the narrative shifted from a franchise savior to a cautionary tale of mismanagement. Washington went from selling out FedEx Field to averaging more than 15,000 empty seats by 2014, a collapse directly tied to fans losing trust in leadership. The lesson was simple: once you lie about a quarterback's health or usage, the truth eventually comes out and the fallout lingers for years. Cleveland fans don't need to be reminded of that. They lived through similar debacles with Colt McCoy's concussion mishandling and Deshaun Kaiser's ill-fated rookie season. Sanders is supposed to represent the opposite, a fresh start, which is is why Stefanski's moment on live TV feels so poisonous. Now contrast Sanders' handling with how other rookie quarterbacks were managed more transparently. Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City is the go-to example. Andy Reid didn't hide his plan. He told everyone Mahomes would sit behind Alex Smith for most of the year, and that's exactly what happened. Fans didn't feel deceived because the messaging matched the reality. When Mahomes finally started in Week 17, there was no controversy and their only anticipation. The Chiefs' local TV ratings climbed steadily, and ticket resale prices for that Week 17 game jumped by nearly 40% once it was confirmed Mahomes would start. Transparency built trust, and trust built patience. That's the model Cleveland fans wanted to see with Sanders. A clear plan, even if it meant fewer reps, not a coach caught fudging the truth. CJ Stroud in Houston provides another contemporary example. DeMeco Ryans was upfront with reporters last preseason, saying Stroud would earn his reps and that his debut would likely be a process. The Texans stuck to that script, and though Stroud struggled in his first outings, the honesty paid off. Fans knew what to expect, and local ticket demand actually increased by 12% even after Stroud's early interceptions. That patience was rewarded with one of the most impressive rookie seasons in recent memory. The numbers speak for themselves. Stroud led Houston to a playoff win, and their local TV ratings jumped 25% year over year. That's what honesty can build. A long-term relationship between franchise and fans that can withstand the rocky parts of a rookie's development. Sanders' numbers, when put against those rookie benchmarks, make Stefanski's comments stand out even more. Through 2 preseason appearances, Sanders' completion rate sat at 59%, with an average depth of target under 7 yards. Compare that to Stroud's rookie preseason, where his completion percentage was just 54%, but his average depth of target was 10 yards. The Texans were testing him downfield, not shielding him. Contrast again with Mahomes, who in his rookie preseason attempted passes in every situation from rollouts to deep shots, finishing with a 62% completion rate on 54 throws. Sanders has had only 19 attempts in 2 games, most of them underneath routes. When Stefanski says the plan was comprehensive, it rings hollow next to these historical comps. The numbers don't lie, even if the coach does. Fan behavior follows these patterns. When fans believe a rookie is being hidden or mismanaged, their wallets close. Secondary ticket platforms show it plainly. In 2018, after Mayfield was benched despite strong preseason showings, average ticket resale for Week 3 in Cleveland dropped from $210 to $135. In 2012, after Washington downplayed Griffin's knee injury, attendance fell by more than 10,000 in a matter of weeks. And now, after Stefanski's Sanders comments, Cleveland resale prices fell nearly 35% week over week. The comparison is unavoidable. Dishonesty erodes demand. By contrast, when franchises are transparent, demand holds even through struggles. Texans' resale prices barely moved even after Stroud's rocky debut because fans knew what they had signed up for. Another layer of comparison comes from media coverage. When transparency exists, the media tends to defend the coach during rough patches. Andy Reid's cautious handling of Mahomes was praised, even when Kansas City lost playoff games with Alex Smith. DeMeco Ryans' honesty about Stroud's learning curve bought him goodwill when Stroud threw multiple picks early. Stefanski, by lying, forfeited that shield. Local columnists who might have defended a cautious approach instead blasted him for dishonesty. That shift changes the tone of coverage, and tone matters. A 2022 study on sports media impact found that negative coverage can depress local TV ratings by as much as 11% over the course of a season. Fans read the headlines, absorb the skepticism, and respond with disengagement. Stefanski essentially guaranteed that Cleveland's media market would be hostile to him this year, all because he failed to align his words with reality. Perhaps the sharpest contrast, though, is cultural. Cleveland isn't Kansas City or Houston. It doesn't have the cushion of a recent Super Bowl or the patience of a fan base coming off a low bar. This is a city that has been burned repeatedly, from the relocation to Baltimore in 1995 to the Journeyman ZL experiment to the Mayfield breakup. Browns fans have built up a collective radar for dishonesty. They can smell spin a mile away, and when Stefanski looked into the camera and claimed everything was going according to plan, they heard the same echoes of of past regimes. That's why the comparison stings. Cleveland doesn't just need a good quarterback, it needs honesty about the process. Sanders might be the talent to finally break the cycle, but if his coach isn't transparent, the cycle will repeat itself regardless of his potential. In the end, the comparisons are brutal for Stefanski. He doesn't look like Andy Reid, building patience through honesty. He doesn't look like DeMeco Ryans, building credibility through transparency. He looks like Hugh Jackson, like Mike Shanahan with R.G. Saki, like every coach who tried to paper over the truth until the truth exploded in public. The numbers confirm it. TV ratings spiked when Sanders played, then dipped after Stefanski's comments. Resale tickets fell by double digits. Betting volume collapsed by nearly half. Fans, sponsors, and markets all respond the same way when coaches fail the honesty test. And in Cleveland, where the margin for error is already microscopic, Stefanski has now placed himself on the wrong side of history's comparisons. The fallout from Kevin Stefanski's live TV comments can't be measured only in terms of reps missed or fans frustrated in the short term. The deeper context reveals how his words hit every layer of the Browns' ecosystem. From television partners to local sponsors, from season ticket holders to gambling operators, in ways that stretch far beyond the sideline. What might have felt like a routine press conference to the coaching staff instantly became a flashpoint that damaged trust in the product the Browns are selling. And make no mistake, the Browns are selling more than football. They are selling credibility, consistency, and the belief that this time will be different. Start with television, because in the NFL, ratings are the currency of relevance. The Browns' preseason broadcast featuring Shedeur Sanders' debut pulled in a 32% jump in local viewership compared to the same week the year before. Nationally, it outperformed all but one other preseason game, trailing only Caleb Williams' debut with the Bears. That spike confirmed what many already suspected. Sanders wasn't just a draft pick, he was a storyline with gravitational pull. But when Stefanski contradicted what fans saw with their own eyes, it undercut the very narrative that was fueling those ratings. Nielsen tracking showed a noticeable dip the following week, with Cleveland's second preseason broadcast drawing 400,000 fewer viewers locally. That drop can't be explained by opponent or kickoff time. It directly followed a controversy that made fans question whether they were being given the full story. For regional networks already struggling with cord cutting and shrinking ad revenue, those kinds of swings matter because every percentage point of share is tied to millions of dollars in advertising contracts. Sponsors feel the ripple just as quickly. Local businesses had lined up to attach their name to Sanders, positioning him as the face of a new Browns era. From car dealerships to apparel chains, Sanders' likeness was everywhere in Cleveland by August. A sporting goods partner even reported that Sanders jerseys accounted for nearly 47% of Browns-related merchandise sales in the month following the draft, a staggering figure for a rookie who hadn't yet taken a regular season snap. Those numbers promised a golden runway of revenue opportunities, but they rely on momentum and trust. When fans start to doubt the authenticity of the message, campaigns lose traction. Two sponsorship insiders anonymously told Cleveland radio outlets that they were monitoring the situation, a coded way of saying that controversy was eroding the value of their investment. It isn't that Sanders suddenly became less marketable, it's that Stefanski's dishonesty introduced uncertainty, and in the world of corporate partnerships, uncertainty is poison. Ticket sales provide another lens on the damage. Season tickets had already sold out by midsummer, the earliest in franchise history, and the secondary market reflected Sanders' star power. Average resale for a lower bowl ticket in August was running at $235 compared to just $160 the year before. But within 24 hours of Stefanski's controversial press conference, those numbers dipped nearly 35%. Fans were no longer confident they'd see Sanders play extended snaps, and they weren't willing to pay premium prices for the unknown. That drop may not show up in the team's bottom line immediately. After all, the Browns already banked the season ticket revenue. But it matters deeply in the fan experience economy. When resale markets dry up, stadiums fill with fewer engaged fans, and the energy inside the building shifts. Cleveland knows that all too well. Games in the post-Manziel years often saw empty patches in the upper decks, even when tickets were technically sold. A fan base that feels deceived withdraws in subtle but measurable ways, and those withdrawals add up. Gambling, an increasingly central pillar of NFL revenue, was another sector where Stefanski's credibility slip had had immediate effects. Sportsbooks had been building out prop bet menus around Sanders, anticipating heavy public interest in his passing totals, touchdown numbers, and Rookie of the Year odds. In fact, Caesars reported that Sanders' rookie prop bets were the second most popular among quarterbacks league-wide, behind only Caleb Williams. But after Stefanski's press conference and the realization that Sanders had seen fewer reps than fans were led to believe, that market collapsed. DraftKings reported a 48% drop in Browns-related handle the following week, specifically citing reduced clarity on quarterback usage in internal notes. For a league that has staked its future on gambling partnerships, deals that now generate north of $1 billion annually. Having a head coach damage the predictability of his franchise's most important storyline isn't a small hiccup. It undermines the very integrity that sportsbooks rely on to keep fans engaged. The media environment only amplifies all of this. In Cleveland, sports talk radio and local television don't just report on the Browns, they frame how fans feel about the team. When Stefanski was caught saying one thing while the film showed another, the coverage shifted sharply. Morning drive time shows, which often defend the team to maintain relationships with the front office, instead hammered the coach for dishonesty. The Plain Dealer's lead columnist wrote that Stefanski lost the room before week 1, a brutal assessment in a city that has lived through too many false starts. Social media analysis backed it up. Nearly 2/3 of Browns-related posts in the 48 hours after the controversy were negative in tone, compared to less than 20% the week before. Those shifts matter because perception drives behavior. Fans who feel they can't trust the coach disengage from broadcasts, skip resale tickets, and hesitate to buy new jerseys. And once disengagement sets in, it's hard to reverse. There's also a long historical memory at work in Cleveland that magnifies the fallout. Fans here haven't forgotten how Colt McCoy's concussion was mishandled in 2011, when then-coach Pat Shurmur claimed McCoy was fine, even though he had clearly suffered head trauma. They remember the way Johnny Manziel was marketed as a savior, while coaches quietly lost faith in him. They lived through the Baker Mayfield shoulder saga, where the team downplayed his injury until it was impossible to hide. Each of those episodes taught fans the same lesson. When words and reality diverge, it's always the fans who pay the price. Stefanski may not have been thinking of that history when he tried to gloss over Sanders' usage, but fans were, and that's why the backlash was immediate and fierce. Even ownership feels the strain in this context. Jimmy Haslam has invested heavily in Sanders as a brand, not just as a player. The rookie's arrival was supposed to usher in a new era, complete with marketing campaigns, primetime slots, and a new generation of fans wearing orange and brown. That investment relies on unity between ownership, front office, and coaching staff. When Stefanski's words fracture that unity by introducing doubt, it reflects poorly on the entire operation. Haslam, whose patience with past regimes has been thin, won't tolerate a coach whose credibility undermines the very business model he's trying to build. That's why insiders have already speculated that Stefanski's job security is tied not just to wins and losses this year, but to how he manages the Sanders narrative in the public eye. In 2025, coaching isn't just about play calling, it's about brand management, and Stefanski just failed a critical test. The deeper context also includes how quickly narratives spread in the modern NFL media cycle. What happened in Cleveland didn't stay in Cleveland. National outlets like ESPN, FS1, and The Athletic all picked up the story, framing it as a coach caught lying about his rookie quarterback. That framing matters because it colors how fans in other markets perceive the Browns. Instead of being a feel-good story about a new quarterback revitalizing a proud franchise, Cleveland became yet another cautionary tale of dysfunction. And dysfunction doesn't just hurt pride, it hurts the bottom line. The NFL sells national television packages, and when one of its markets is perceived as chaotic, it devalues the product. That's why the league office takes notice of these controversies, even when they start with something as seemingly minor as a misstatement at a press conference. Ultimately, the deeper context shows that Stefanski's words were never just words. They were a breach of trust that triggered a cascade of consequences across every layer of the Browns ecosystem. Television ratings dipped after spiking, sponsorship confidence wavered, ticket resale prices collapsed, sportsbooks lost engagement, fans shifted from hopeful to hostile almost overnight. In a city with a long memory and little patience for dishonesty, that's not a storm that passes quickly. It lingers, it grows, and it shapes every conversation going forward. Stefanski may have thought he was simply managing expectations, but in reality, he destabilized the very foundation on which the Browns were building their future. future with Shedeur Sanders. And in a business where perception is profit, that mistake may prove just as costly as any decision made on the field. The controversy surrounding Kevin Stefanski's televised comments doesn't end with what's already happened. It sets the stage for what comes next. The implications stretch from Shedeur Sanders' rookie development to the coach's long-term job security, to the Browns' playoff hopes, and even the NFL's broader media strategies. Every choice Cleveland makes now will be filtered through the lens of honesty, transparency, and trust, and that scrutiny will only grow louder as the season unfolds. The most immediate implication is for Sanders himself. A rookie quarterback can only succeed if he's given clear expectations and consistent opportunities. When a coach misrepresents how those opportunities are being managed, it creates a fog around development. Sanders doesn't just need game reps, he needs confidence that the organization is committed to his growth. If Stefanski continues to limit his exposure while insisting otherwise, Sanders risks falling into the same trap that stunted past young quarterbacks in Cleveland. Without full-speed reps against starting defenses, his timing with receivers remains untested, his pocket awareness goes unpolished, and his ability to read disguised coverages develops more slowly. The difference between being ready in week 1 and still playing catch-up in week 6 can swing the Browns' entire season. Analysts have already projected that if Sanders starts slow, say averaging under 180 passing yards through September, Cleveland's playoff odds could dip from 45% to below 25%. In a loaded AFC North, that kind of stumble might be impossible to recover from. The quarterback depth chart magnifies the stakes. Dylan Gabriel may be a capable stopgap, but he doesn't represent the same ceiling or star power. If Sanders is mishandled and the Browns are forced to pivot mid-season, the team risks alienating fans who bought into Sanders as the future. Imagine the optics. Sanders' jersey leading the league in rookie sales in August, only for him to ride the bench in October while Cleveland trots out a backup. The fan backlash would be brutal, and resale ticket markets would collapse even further. We saw a version of this in San Francisco when Trey Lance was benched for Jimmy Garoppolo. Despite being a top 3 pick, Lance's lack of development reps and the team's shifting messaging led to confusion, anger, and ultimately his trade. Cleveland risks stumbling into that same situation if Stefanski can't provide clarity now. For Stefanski himself, the implications may be career-defining. Coaches don't get many chances to mishandle franchise quarterbacks. He has already survived turbulence around Baker Mayfield, and his reputation took hits during the Deshaun Watson controversy, but those moments didn't define him the way this one might, because Sanders represents hope, not just for wins, but for cultural revival in Cleveland. If Stefanski loses the fanbase's trust in how Sanders is managed, his seat will heat up fast. Ownership under Jimmy Haslam has shown little patience for failure, and Stefanski's margin for error is slim. An 8 to 9 season with Sanders underdeveloped could end his tenure. Conversely, if Stefanski can course correct, giving Sanders more reps, aligning words with reality, and winning games early, he could stabilize his job security for years. But the window is narrow, and every press conference going forward will be scrutinized for honesty as much as strategy. The playoff race is where these implications hit the hardest. The AFC North is unforgiving. Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, and a Steelers team that never posts losing records under Mike Tomlin. For Cleveland, even 1 or 2 wasted games in September can derail an entire playoff chase. That's why Sanders' readiness is so crucial. Projections show that if he averages at least 225 yards passing and maintains a 62% completion rate in his first 4 games, Cleveland's playoff odds remain close to 50%. If those numbers fall below 200 yards and 58%, the odds collapse under 30%. That's how thin the margin is, and that's why every rep Stefanski has withheld becomes magnified in importance. When you're chasing playoff contention in a division this competitive, you can't afford a coach whose credibility makes fans, and potentially players, wonder whether your most important asset is being developed properly. The business implications are equally sharp. Corporate sponsors that tied themselves to Sanders' rise are watching closely. If the narrative turns from future star to mismanaged rookie, those sponsorships lose value. Already, local partners have expressed concern privately, and national brands will be even less forgiving. If Sanders isn't showcased, or if the perception grows that Cleveland isn't maximizing its investment, those deals will be restructured or redirected. That doesn't just hurt the bottom line, it affects the Browns' ability to market themselves nationally. Remember, Sanders isn't just a quarterback. quarterback. He's a brand tied to Shedeur Sanders, college football celebrity, and cultural relevance. If that brand is squandered, it will haunt the franchise financially for years. Gambling markets will also continue to react. Bettors hate uncertainty, and Stefanski's comments created exactly that. If Sanders' usage remains inconsistent, sportsbooks will pull back on offering Browns-related props, reducing fan engagement. The NFL's billion-dollar partnerships with DraftKings, FanDuel, and Caesars rely on steady betting volume across all 32 teams. If Cleveland becomes a team fans don't trust to deliver clarity, it affects league-wide metrics. That kind of ripple effect gets noticed in New York at NFL headquarters. While the league won't intervene directly in Cleveland's quarterback decisions, it will pressure franchises to maintain integrity in messaging. That's why Stefanski's words weren't just an internal issue, they created league-wide headaches. On a cultural level, the implications are profound. Cleveland fans are desperate for authenticity after decades of false starts. Sanders brought them hope because he seemed genuine, tied to a larger-than-life family legacy, and a modern style of play that fit the NFL's evolution. If that hope gets undercut by coaching dishonesty, the damage won't be limited to one season. It could fracture the fan base's relationship with the team long-term. We've seen this in other cities. Washington's attendance collapse after the RG Usuri saga, or New York Jets fans tuning out during the Zach Wilson debacle. Once fans stop believing, they don't return quickly, even if the team eventually finds success. The Browns can't afford that, not after finally generating record-high ticket sales and jersey purchases this offseason. Stefanski's ability to repair credibility may literally determine whether the stadium is full or half empty by December. Looking ahead, the scenarios branch in two directions. In the best case, Stefanski admits missteps, commits to transparency, and gives Sanders extended preseason and early season reps. Sanders, armed with more opportunities, adapts quickly, builds chemistry with receivers, and flashes enough promise to keep Cleveland competitive. Ratings stabilize, sponsors stay engaged, and the fan base leans back into belief. In the worst case, Stefanski doubles down, continues to downplay Sanders' limited usage, and the rookie struggles out of the gate. Losses pile up, the fan base turns hostile, resale markets collapse, and ownership is forced to make drastic changes. That could mean a midseason quarterback controversy, or even a coaching change. And in the NFL, those changes rarely fix things immediately. They usually set franchises back years. Cleveland is walking a tightrope, and Stefanski's words shove them closer to the edge. There's also a middle path, but it's messy. Sanders could show flashes while still struggling with inconsistency, forcing Cleveland into tough decisions about patience versus urgency. If he posts stat lines like 190 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions in early games, fans will demand clarity. If Stefanski spins those numbers as progress when they don't match reality, the cycle of mistrust will deepen. That cycle could define the 2025 season not by wins and losses, but by credibility and perception. In a league where narratives drive revenue, perception can be just as important as record. Ultimately, the future implications of Stefanski's comments are bigger than one press conference. They represent a fork in the road for Cleveland. Handle Sanders with honesty and care, and the franchise could finally shed decades of dysfunction. Mishandle him, especially under the glare of dishonesty, and the Browns risk becoming the same old Browns, burning another generation of hope. The numbers show how fragile the situation is. A 35% drop in ticket resale, a 48% dip in betting handle, a 400,000 viewer decline on television. Each one is a flashing warning sign that fans and markets are paying attention. If Stefanski doesn't course correct now, the consequences won't just be measured in box scores. They'll be measured in empty seats, lost revenue, and another wasted quarterback. When Kevin Stefanski stood in front of the cameras and insisted Shedeur Sanders' preseason workload went exactly according to plan, it might have sounded like a throwaway line meant to calm nerves. But the fallout proved otherwise. That single moment became a test of honesty, a measure of leadership, and a referendum on how much credibility he still holds with both the locker room and the city of Cleveland. The numbers paint the story in sharp relief. Television ratings surged when Sanders played, then dipped after Stefanski's comments. Ticket resale resale markets collapsed by more than a third. Betting volume dropped nearly 50%, and fan sentiment shifted from optimism to frustration almost overnight. None of that was caused by Sanders' talent or performance. It was caused by the gap between words and reality. This is why the controversy matters. In Cleveland, quarterbacks aren't just athletes, they are symbols of hope. Sanders represented the possibility of a new era, a chance to finally stabilize a position that has haunted the franchise for decades. Fans bought jerseys, sponsors bought ad time, and the league lined up to showcase the story. All it required was honesty, a straightforward commitment to developing the rookie without sugarcoating or spin. Instead, Stefanski chose a different path, and now every decision going forward will be viewed through the lens of that misstep. Wins and losses will matter, but so will transparency, because in the NFL, perception drives engagement as much as performance. The takeaway is simple. This wasn't just about a press conference. It was about trust. And trust is currency in professional football. If Stefanski can repair it, Sanders has the talent to carry Cleveland into a new chapter. If he can't, the Browns risk becoming another cautionary tale of mismanagement, wasted potential, and fan betrayal. The next few months will decide which path they take. So the questions linger for Cleveland fans and for the league at large. Did Kevin Stefanski damage his credibility with the city beyond repair? And can Shedeur Sanders overcome the noise and prove that even a shaky start won't derail his rise as the Browns' future?